So here we'll sketch the graph of the exponential function y equals 2 to the x plus 1 minus 1 using the various transformations that we've learned in this class. So we start off with graphing the function y equals 2 to the x. So that's our first step. So it's an exponential function, and we know what a standard exponential function looks like. There are a few points that we could mark. One important point is the Y-intercept. So the Y-intercept is when x equals 0. So plug in x equals 0 to get 2 to the 0, which is equal to 1. So 0, 1 is a point on the graph. So I marked the point 0, 1 here in red. Another important feature in this graph is the horizontal asymptote, which happens to be the x-axis. So I marked that in green. So these are the two, one is a point and the other is a line that we can use as reference and sketch the graph. Remember that the graph does not intersect with the x-axis. It gets closer and closer because the x-axis is a horizontal asymptote. So that's our first step, sketching the graph of y equals 2x. Our next step, so we're done with step 1. Our next step is to sketch the graph of y equals 2 to the x plus 1. So when we change x to x plus 1, the graph shifts to the left by 1 unit. Okay, so we shift the graph to the left by 1 unit. Remember that when the graph shifts to the left, the horizontal asymptote remains the same. That doesn't change. So I've just marked it in green, just so you know that the horizontal asymptote is still the x-axis. The point 0, 1, which was on the graph of y equals 2 to the x, shifts to the left. So when we shift a point to the left, we subtract 1 from the x coordinate. So 0 minus 1 gives us negative 1. Since it's a shift to the left, the y coordinate does not change. So our new point is negative 1, 1. So the point negative 1, 1 sits on the graph. Now, in order to sketch the graph, we know the horizontal asymptote, but there's one more important point. It would be nice to mark that, and that is the Y-intercept. How do we find the Y-intercept? By substituting 0 into the function. So when I plug in 0 into, so we're looking at this, 0 into f of x equals 2 to the x plus 1, we get 2 to the 0 plus 1, which is 2. So 0, 2 is a point on the graph. So we mark that point and then sketch the graph of y equals 2 to the x plus 1. Our third step and the last step would be to subtract 1 from the equation. So when we subtract 1 from the equation, so we're done with step 2, now we're in step 3. When we subtract 1 from the equation, the entire graph shifts down by 1 unit. Now this is when the horizontal asymptote, which I marked in green, which was really the x-axis, shifts down by 1 unit. Now, the horizontal asymptote is used like a reference line to sketch the graph. Now, we marked 2 other points. We shift both the points down. When we shift a point down, we subtract 1 from the y coordinate. So, negative 1, 1 becomes negative 1, 1 minus 1, which is equal to 0. Negative 1, 0. 0, 2, that was another point on the graph, shifts down by 1 unit. So it becomes 0, 2, and comma 2 minus 1, which is 0, comma 1. We mark both the points on the graph and sketch the graph based on the horizontal asymptote, which is in green. So make sure you're writing down everything, marking important points and lines, and sketching graphs as you go from one step to another.